Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome to Love and Abuse. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. Someone asked me about recovering after breaking all contact with an emotionally abusive person. Their message says, "You've helped me gain perspective with your show. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful. I hope you can continue your work. My question is about recovering after having to break all contact with an emotionally abusive person. Maybe narcissistic behavior, but I can't be sure of that. I personally put so much effort into making true what my friend was stating to me." I think that's the friend that they're talking about, the one they broke contact with. "At first, it started out with not judging, not putting my opinions on him, and being understanding of his viewpoints or choice of words. As this grew into a really toxic interaction with fear, guilt, and pressure, I completely lost myself, and was dependent on him as my foundation on validating my behavior. That was really noticeable after I ended the friendship. I'm quite comfortable with accepting the uncertainties of life, but my search will of course continue. Now I do want to keep being interested in other people and be open and vulnerable, but I need a more durable foundation that is unshakable while remaining open to the fact that all my beliefs could be wrong." I think there is some language barrier here because parts of this question I'm not fully understanding, but I'm going to continue and see what I can answer. The rest of it goes, "How do I not completely lose myself when I let an abusive person get close to me? How do I recognize this before I give my power away to someone? And how do I recognize this potential in early interactions? Thanks for looking at my questions." Okay, thanks so much for writing, and I'm going to do my best to interpret a couple things here and answer your questions. First of all, I've talked a lot about this in other episodes of this show, so if you haven't listened to, I'm going to say every single episode, you should probably listen to every single episode because I go over a lot of this stuff, but I'm going to answer your questions directly here and now. So one of the first things that you said is, my question is about recovering after having to break all contact with an emotionally abusive person. Maybe narcissistic, but I can't be sure of that. Let's just say that they were a full-on narcissist. That is a whole nother level. If you're dealing with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, you are on an entirely different level. Zero empathy, zero care for how you feel or what you're going through. It doesn't matter. It's all about them, and they make it all about you. So narcissistic personality disorder is, and I'm not going to get into the full definition here, but my understanding and knowledge of narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is that you don't really exist except only as an extension of them and what they need from you. And there are probably people listening to this show right now that say, yes, that's the situation I'm in. That's what it feels like. I don't know if that means that the other person is narcissistic or not, but there are a lot of people with narcissistic tendencies. But if you're in a relationship with somebody with NPD, then you are in a very emotionally dangerous situation. Because when your emotions don't matter, then you will be crushed over and over again. They're going to find ways to crush you. This is, again, my experience. I'm not saying that every single person in the world with NPD is like this. In my experience, NPD usually represents a very emotionally dangerous situation for the other person. So if you are in a relationship with somebody with NPD, don't expect them to care about you. Only expect them to seem like they care about you to the extent that they need you. And if you've ever broken up with a narcissist, the very first thing that typically happens is they don't care. They don't try to contact you. They don't miss you. In fact, they'll probably say something mean to you, about you. so that you feel bad about yourself as you exit their life because you're no longer their supply. And then they get into another relationship. And they usually seem happier than ever in the next relationship. But it has nothing to do with you, and it has nothing to do with you not being able to make them happy, because that's not what you can do. In fact, nobody can make them happy. They only make themselves happy by setting up scenarios and controlling people in a way that force them to make them happy. So when you see someone like that get into another relationship and they seem so happy, the person they're with is going to experience exactly what you experienced, if not worse. So it just depends on who they are. It's never better. Plus, if you've been in a relationship like this, remember how great it was at first. Because they can be predators. They can prey on those who are most susceptible to their manipulation. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. If it's narcissistic personality disorder, you probably don't have a chance. It's very difficult to get beyond that unless they go through some major enlightenment or major life-changing event where they finally realize that the whole world is not about them and not for them to control. I haven't seen that happen. I know that when some sociopathic people and those with narcissistic tendencies get older, like when they're in their 60s, 70s, and maybe 80s, their narcissism tends to take a back seat. I don't know if it goes away completely. I have not done studies or read studies on this, but it does seem that the older they get, the less narcissistic they seem. But I don't know. So there's a little bit about NPD. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let me address the other stuff that you're talking about here or asking about. You said you need a durable foundation that is unshakable while remaining open to the fact that all your beliefs could be wrong. I'm not sure what you mean by that. All your beliefs about what? About people showing up as possibly not being healthy for you? Could be that. I've talked about before how all my relationships have failed. Usually I was the cause of it. And every relationship that failed was another reinforcement that relationships won't work out for me in my life. So when I got into the relationship I'm in now, my girlfriend asked me, how can you really devote yourself and invest into this relationship where you've had everyone in your life break up with you? How can you fully be present and fully be here and fully trusting that this is going to work out? And I told her, I have no clue if it's going to work out. I mean, I think we're solid. I think this is going to last for the rest of my life. And yet I know that any day it could end. And it's just a weird in-between place I'm in, but it doesn't put any fear into me. It doesn't make me concerned about the future or concerned that she's going to find something weird about me or wrong about me and then leave. Only because I've come to learn that the more I spend time worried about what will happen, the more I miss today. And this is all about being in the present moment, being with the person you're with right here, right now, because quite frankly, the earth could blow up tomorrow and nobody's here. So why wouldn't I try to spend the highest quality time with the person I'm with today? So this is just a philosophical viewpoint that I've created in my life that just happened because I had so many relationships that fell apart. And I could choose to continue worrying about who I'm going to meet and what they're going to be like and what they're going to do tomorrow or if they're going to break up with me. I could choose to worry and be concerned about all of that, or I can choose to see the person in front of me today and go, wow, I love being with this person. That takes practice. That just takes practice. You just love being with this person today. Now, if you're with an emotionally abusive person, that's probably not what you say. You probably say, I wish this person would stop hurting me. I wish this person would change. I wish this person wouldn't make me feel guilty or make me feel small or make me feel unworthy. When those words go through your head or come out of your mouth when you're talking to your best friend or whatever, then something's got to change. The present moment isn't happening. You can't be present in that because you're experiencing it. You are living it, and it's almost torture. It's suffering for sure, at least emotionally. And when you're suffering like this, something needs to change. You need to have a talk about it. You need to talk to a therapist or talk to each other or see a couples counselor or see individual counselors. At least get it out of your system, talk about it so that it doesn't continue. Or don't worry about if they see a counselor or not. Just find your own counselor or therapist and talk to them about it, because it's possible sometimes the other person is a bad influence while in the counseling session. So just got to be aware of that. Sometimes it doesn't always work when you go in as a couple or as two people if you're not in a romantic relationship. If you're not in a romantic relationship, then definitely get individual therapy or listen to shows like this or do your own homework. Look up signs of emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse, and just get knowledgeable. And I'm hoping this show helps you do that as well. But coming back to what I was saying, the best way to look at any type of relationship is realizing that there's always risk. There's always the risk of someone being mean. There's always the risk of somebody breaking up with you. There's always the risk that they'll hurt you in some way. Then there's always the chance that you'll be happy. They're all equally there, and it's really impossible to remove all that. However, you can be prepared, and that's what I'm going to talk about right now, because this person asked 3 questions that I'm going to go over. The first question is, how do I not completely lose myself when I let an abusive person get close to me? Well, first off, don't let an abusive person get close to you. If you know they're abusive, don't get close to them and don't let them get close to you. However, I think what you're asking is they become abusive after we're close. So yeah, we want to figure out what the abusive behaviors are before getting into any type of relationship with them. I look at all relationships as ones based on mutual respect. That's probably the very first quality I look for, mutual respect. I don't look for love in the relationship, because without mutual respect, there can be no love. That might throw some people off, and maybe some people disagree, but I believe you have to have mutual respect in order for there to be love. I suggest you don't put love in front of that, because if you put love in front of mutual respect, then you will love somebody that disrespects you. And I don't want that. I would rather you love somebody that respects you. And how do you do that? You wait for the respect to happen first. If respect is happening, if kindness is happening, then love happens naturally. You don't even have to say, I love them. You just feel it. You know it because they are respecting you and they are kind. I mean, there's more to it. They're honest and they're safe to be around and all kinds of values that you have in a relationship. But mutual respect, kindness, those two are pretty much near the top. But mutual respect should happen first, and then the love can happen naturally. And if you're going to take anything away from every episode of this show, it really is about kindness and respect. If you're not getting kindness and respect, like I said, love fails. And I don't see love as an indicator of a great relationship. Again, I think kindness and respect are. If you have kindness and respect in a relationship, love will happen automatically. It becomes intrinsic. And I see love as when someone supports your happiness. If that means, for example, you want to go for a drive and they want to stay home, an intrinsic, implied love is they don't make you feel bad for leaving. They make you feel good for doing something for yourself. Just a simple drive. Let me go for a drive. And they don't make you feel bad for doing it. Great. Go have a good time. Enjoy yourself. Do you want to come with me? No, I want to stay home. Okay. You have a fun time at home. I'm going to go for a drive. Great. You're supporting each other's paths. You are being kind. You're being respectful. And you are supporting who they want to be and what they want to do. I see that as love. When kindness, respect, and support for your happiness are at the top of your list, love happens when those fall into place. And again, don't look for love or make it your goal to fall in love. Make your goal to find someone that treats you the way you want to be treated. This is where you don't force love, you don't look for love, you just expect love to happen naturally because everything else is falling into place. And also, I want to make sure that you add that when you're feeling bad and you can't figure out why, but you know it has something to do with the other person, catch it when it happens. What I mean by that is get good at catching the moment you feel bad. Let's take the drive example. Okay, they said I shouldn't go for a drive because there's a storm outside. That sounds like good advice, but why do I feel bad? What about that interaction makes me feel bad? This is one of those moments. This is one of those moments where you're feeling bad and you're not sure why. So instead of like glossing over it, stop, come up with an answer. Maybe it's because I'm an adult and I can do whatever I want. If I want to drive during a storm, I don't need anyone to tell me not to. I mean, it doesn't mean they can't tell me to be careful, but I don't like being treated like a child. I think that's why I feel bad. That's what you want to do. You want to catch these as they happen. So as soon as you feel bad about something they did or said, or after something they did or said, and a part of you wants to say, well, maybe it's something I'm doing wrong. Maybe I shouldn't drive while I'm in a storm. No, stop right there and really understand what made you feel bad about that interaction. And I just gave you an example. That could be exactly what might happen. But you need to figure it out for yourself so that you can start catching this. This is how you don't lose yourself in the relationship, because what you're going to do is catch those little things that make you feel bad before they turn into big things and before they get lost in the relationship as a whole, so you completely lose yourself, which is what happens. Everything becomes jumbled and overwhelmed, and suddenly you're in the middle of all of this likely emotionally abusive behavior, and you don't know where to start. You don't know how to get out of it. You don't know what to do next, and that can just make you pull your hair out. So the second question is, how do I recognize this before I give my power away to someone? And I just said this in another way. Write everything down that makes you feel bad when they do it or say it, and then notice it as it happens. See, this is one of those things that when you're in the moment, when you're interacting and suddenly you feel bad, you're not going to be able to access what just happened very easily, because you're sucked into what I would call the emotional abuse trance, meaning you're sucked into the conversation and you're too involved to be an outside observer because you're so actively engaged in the conversation and you're trying to figure things out, and you might be a little confused. You're just in this almost trance-like state of accepting the information that you're hearing, maybe even resisting the information that you're hearing, but you're not far enough removed from it to observe it and figure out how to break it down and determining what caused you to feel bad in that moment. So this is why it's important to write things down, especially after they happen, so you can determine what moment you felt bad, so that when it happens again, you can say, hey, this moment is happening again. For example, as soon as you feel yourself taking the blame for something, you've got something to look at. You don't want to just feel bad and then decide that it must be something you did. I mean, this is one of the more common things that emotional abuse victims do. They'll feel bad about something and then decide that maybe it's something they did, they themselves did. And I'm not saying it never is. I'm just saying that sometimes you have to stop and take a look at it. Don't automatically take the blame, and ask yourself, is this really something I did wrong, or are they trying to make me take the blame? If they're trying to blame you for something or accuse you of something, stop and think about it. Get away from them. Think about it in your own mind. Look at it and compare it to your list of things that make you feel bad. Is this one of those times? What I see over and over again is that some of the most kindest, independent, brilliant people have gotten into abusive relationships to come out on the other side of them as fearful and confused and even dependent, like this person mentioned. I see so many people get into relationships feeling really good about themselves and getting out of the relationship feeling really bad about themselves. And that's a big thing to look for. As soon as you start feeling bad about yourself, that means the other person is not supporting you feeling good about yourself. I mean, it doesn't always mean that, but you want to look for that. You want to look to make sure that the other person isn't intentionally trying to make you feel bad about yourself. Because if that's the case, that's definitely emotional abuse. That's definitely hurtful behavior, because people who love you, care for you, and support you want you to feel good about yourself. They want you to be happy. They don't want you to feel bad about yourself. If you're unhappy, they're unhappy. So that has to be at the top of your list too on what to look for. Are they making me feel bad about myself? Because people who love me don't do that. Write that one down. People who love me don't make me feel bad about myself. And like I said, some of the most kindest, brilliant people got into relationships, then came out the other side as fearful, confused, and dependent. And this is what I recommend you do. Figure out who you were before the relationship started, and then write those qualities down. Then what you do is, as you're in the relationship or having interactions, do you feel any of those qualities diminish? Good example is, you went into the relationship thinking you were pretty smart. I'm a pretty smart person. I figure stuff out. I'm good at my job, and I just, get things done. I'm pretty smart, and I'm a go-getter. And then you're in an interaction with the person you care about, but they're being hurtful in some way, and maybe you don't know it, but you might figure out that they're being hurtful because during the conversation, they're making you feel dumb. They're making you feel like an idiot. They're making you feel like you don't get anything done. Maybe you're a failure. That's what they're making you feel. If that's happening, this is one of those things that slips under the radar. It is hurtful behavior that's meant to make you feel bad about yourself, mainly because if you feel bad about yourself, you will likely try harder for the person who's doing this to you, and you'll likely seek validation from that very same person. So the person who's trying to make you feel bad about yourself is also the person you go to try to make you feel good about yourself. It's like you're trying to make up for what they did to you, hoping that they can make you feel better. But in reality, what happens is they're creating this love and abuse cycle. That's the trauma bond I've talked about. The trauma bond keeps you in a relationship because you keep getting the highs and the lows. You get the high of love and support and amazing times, and then you get the low where they diminish all these good qualities about you so that you'll try to get that high back from them. And that creates the trauma bond. It's one of the things that creates a trauma bond. So if you felt worthy before the relationship, but now that's in question, do me a favor, stop what you're doing and take a look at why. If you felt smart before, but now that's in question, stop what you're doing and take a look at why. If you felt attractive before, or you felt like a good decision maker, but now you're not so sure, stop and take a look. Figure this out. Take a break from them so you can figure it out. That might mean going into a different room or going to the park or going in your car. Whatever you need to do, figure it out. When did you stop feeling good about yourself? When did you stop feeling smart? Or more specifically, did this interaction with them make you feel less than you were before? Make you feel less attractive, less of a good decision maker, less intelligent, less worthy? Because if it did, then you're starting to catch emotional abuse in process. And that's important, because when you know when it's happening, you can even say it if you want. I know what you're doing right now. You're trying to make me feel bad about myself. You're trying to make me feel like I'm not worthy, like I'm not smart. I know what you're doing. I can see right through it. I'm not saying you should say that, but it might be something you do if you don't want to lose those qualities about yourself, or you want to get into a confrontation, or you really want to call them out on it, and maybe they'll stop. I don't know. It depends on your situation and who the person is and if they want to stop. I hope they do. I hope when you say, hey, you're hurting me, they stop. But not all people will. And some of them will just turn it right back on you, and that's where it gets tougher. And the problem that you run into with many hurtful people is they know that if you feel bad, they will come to you to feel good. And they are the very source of your upset or your self-worth issues. Just like I was saying, when they make you feel bad, you'll come back to them so that you'll feel good. So you have to watch for that too. These are the very obscure, very covert indicators of emotionally abusive behavior, but they're just so much under the radar that they're hard to spot. They're hard to pin down. But if you look at the outcomes of how you feel about the interaction, you can usually start to pinpoint exactly where the bad behavior started or what exactly was said or done to make you feel bad, and then narrow that down even further to figure out if it was some way to diminish you or belittle you, insult you, offend you, just to put you in a place of little or no power. Once you lose your power, they win. They're on top. They believe they're in control. They believe that you're going to come back trying to be nicer to them or get what you need from them, which makes them feel even more in control and more powerful. And I'm generalizing here. Not everyone does this, but that is the typical setup. So in a nutshell, what I want you to do with this last comment I'm making here is remember all the qualities that you appreciate about yourself and look for the signs that they're diminishing. But you have to make sure you get in touch with those qualities first, like writing them down or remembering who you were before the toxic relationship began. Or if you've always known the toxic person, like family, for example, who are you when they're not in your life? You have some amazing qualities, and those qualities get diminished in an emotionally abusive relationship. So you need to look at what you're losing instead of what's happening. If you're losing yourself, if you're losing wonderful qualities about yourself, figure out what those qualities are and catch that stuff as it happens. And you're not going to be able to catch it right away. You have to think about it before you have interactions. Think about all these qualities that you have about yourself so that when you're in an interaction, you can realize, oh, they're trying to destroy my self-worth here. That's one of those qualities that I like about myself. I do feel worthy, or I did feel worthy at one time, and here they are trying to take it away from me. Why would they do that? Why would they want to make me feel bad in that department? Do they want me to beg them at their feet to love me, to make me feel worthy again? Because maybe that's what it feels like. Just remember, emotionally abusive behavior is a daily drip feeding of toxicity, and it slowly poisons you to the point where it cores you out from your inside and turns you into a shell of your former self. And because of that, you need to know and be proud of who you really are when you're not in a toxic relationship, because that is your gauge of toxicity. When you know who you are and you're proud of who you are or who you were before the relationship began, that's your gauge. Because when you're feeling any less in any of the positive aspects of yourself, there's something you have to take a look at right away before things get any further. If you're feeling less worth, less intelligent, less attractive, you got to stop yourself, get out of that situation as soon as possible, and figure out, okay, what just happened? What did they say? What did they do? And why do I feel this way? And then you'll start being more conscious of this behavior so that when it happens, when you're in that emotionally abusive trance I was talking about, it'll be at the forefront of your mind instead of way back where you may not even think about it at the time. So this is why you think about this stuff while you're out of a toxic conversation with a toxic person, and it will help you become prepared when you get into that conversation so you can catch it while it happens. Because the whole point of this is to build up a case inside yourself, not because you want to throw the book at them or anything like that, but so you're knowledgeable in what's happening. Once you're knowledgeable in what's happening, and once you figure out the very specific behaviors and words that they use and the looks that they give you, once you figure all that stuff out and you see it unfold before your eyes, you no longer lose your power. You keep it. I mean, it may take a little while because you have to build some resilience to their strategy, and sometimes their strategy gets worse and worse. Their tactics, they become more clever, but what ends up happening is that you figure out their pattern. I don't know if you've ever played Pac-Man. You ever played Pac-Man when you were a kid, or even now? The game Pac-Man, almost everyone knows Pac-Man. You're a yellow face and you eat dots on a screen. Well, the original arcade machine, there are people that figured out the patterns to the games and were able to get every dot and every power pellet and every fruit and eat every blue ghost and get phenomenal scores that no one else was getting because they remembered the patterns. And if you play that game and remember the patterns, you will never lose a guy and you'll technically beat the game. You just keep playing until the game crashes. And there are people that have done this because they remembered the patterns. And the reason I'm saying this is what it reminds me of. It reminds me of when you learn an emotionally abuser's patterns, they're almost always the same, at least at first. There's always some script that they are unknowingly following themselves. And when that script plays out, you see the pattern. It's like laying out before you, and you can tell yourself, wow, this is happening right now. I can see it happening. He said these words. She gave me that look. He said, she said, they said. All of this stuff plays out, and you put it all together, and suddenly you know how to beat the game. I mean, this is probably a bad example, but you're not really beating the game. You're knowing how the game is played now. And when you know that, you're no longer powerless against it. You may still have to talk to them. You may still have to go through the motions and figure stuff out. What's your next step? And hopefully you can work through it together and make it stop. But at least you're more knowledgeable and they don't take away your power, which is the most important part of all of this. Because the emotionally abusive person is very good at convincing you to convince yourself. That's why it's so damn effective. That's why emotionally abusive people get away with so much, because they convince you to convince yourself. And you don't even realize that you've convinced yourself. But you've got to that point inside an emotionally abusive relationship where they've set you up to fail and set you up to believe things that very likely aren't true. So let me end with this. If you have to try harder and harder to please someone you care about, you're probably trying too hard. Someone you care about and someone who cares about you, they don't make it hard to care about them and especially care about yourself. And I want you to care about yourself so much that they could never take that away from you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to that person who wrote that message. I wish you much strength and healing through this. I wish you the best. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook provides an evaluation of your relationship based on a 200-point assessment. It is geared toward romantic relationships, but many have used it to determine if family or others in their life are being manipulative or emotionally abusive as well. And you'd like to pinpoint the unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad. Let the workbook help you discover the specific components of bad behavior and put into words what you're experiencing. Get the tools you need to help you reach clarity. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. And if you believe you're the emotionally abusive person and you'd like to work on changing that about yourself, head over to healedbeing.com for a program that I created to help you do just that. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant. Because you are. Thanks for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.